Hello and welcome to the Friday football show in advance of a Monday game. So a little extra time for us to prepare, a little extra time for us to let our thoughts marinate and get out there before Monday Night Football between the Steelers and the Dolphins. Myself and Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, as well as the Big Ten Network and Fox. Tim Benz here, Breakfast of the Benz, always brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Meet me at Mike's for every big event on the North Shore across the street from PNC Park at the end of the Clemente Bridge. Over 80 rotating taps, 500 available craft beers. Get yourself a steak and a stone and watch Pittsburgh sports all year long. On Sunday, great day to just sit down at Mike's, have a couple beers. If you're a fantasy football player, if you're just a football fan, you're a Pittsburgh sports fan, you're a Steelers fan, they don't play until Monday. It's a great lineup of Sunday games. We'll get to that, so watch them at Mike's. Mike, good to see you. How are you?
You too, Tim. And when you were introing and saying that we had 24 hours extra, or actually probably closer to 32 hours, 32 to 36 hours extra to get ready for the Steelers to play, it also is that amount of time extra for TJ Watt perhaps to heal. We don't know exactly what occurred that led to him being hospitalized on Wednesday and Thursday. But there certainly is hope that whatever it is will not prevent him from playing on Monday night. No one in the Steelers sphere has said that it will. No one in the Steelers sphere has also said, oh, he's fine and no problem, and he'll be out there against the Dolphins.
Yeah, at the time that we are taping this up, for folks who are watching it back on YouTube or Facebook Live, first of all, thanks for watching. Second of all, you can comment. Go ahead, let your thoughts be known. But it's 9 o'clock on Friday. The last thing we heard a lot on Thursday night was what you had heard Thursday afternoon, that Watt was in the hospital on Thursday because he was put in on Wednesday following an issue that involved one of his lungs or both of his lungs. We really don't know. There were some reports of a partially punctured lung from ESPN. I don't know what that means, and that didn't come from anywhere on the team, at least publicly anyway. Maybe that was the case. We don't know for sure, but we don't know his status as of now. So obviously that plays a lot in the game. Hopefully TJ's okay beyond just the football aspect of all of this. But the Steelers do have a mountain to climb when it comes to replacing him, and that has been reflective in their record, Mike, when he doesn't play, because it's awful. They are a really good team when he plays. They are really bad when he doesn't. Now, I think they're actually deeper at outside linebacker than they have been in the past. It's not just been him and Highsmith and then hope for the best. Herbig has gotten better every year he's been here. I think Sawyer provides a little bit more quality depth, is now the third guy who gets elevated up if Watt can't play. But you got to play him. Like, Herbig hasn't played basically for the last two games. We keep hearing about how he's gotten better against the run and he's not just a pure pass rushing specialist. Okay, prove it. I mean, like, if that's the case, then he should be playing more than a third of the snaps against Baltimore and against Buffalo, especially since their run game on defense isn't any good whether he's in there or not. Like, I don't think it's reflective of Nick Herbig what they're doing against the run. Do you?
No, but I think that a lot of that came down to the fact that, first of all, Highsmith was certainly he was the best player on defense in Baltimore last Sunday, and he might have been the best player on the field for the Steelers, him or DK Metcalf. So you don't necessarily want to take him out unless he or TJ wants to come out. And we've seen TJ in the past feel compelled to come out because he was exhausted, momentarily exhausted, hockey player style, needed the breather before he went back in. But we didn't see a lot of that on Sunday. And I think that that's why Herbig wasn't in there a lot, was that the other guys are both stars. And did not necessarily request or require a lot of break. And so I think that's why he didn't play as much. And also in both of those games, they were significant running threats as quarterbacks. And having the veterans out there that you wanted to keep the rush lanes sort of constant, not fluid, not erratic is a strong word, but you needed that containment as much as you needed sacks. And so I think that was a lot of why they wanted to keep the veterans out there. I don't think it's necessarily reflecting at all on Herbig. I think it's just the comfort level with, you don't take Aaron Rodgers out of the game because you've got a good backup or whatever. You want to keep the guys out there that are doing a great job or doing an effective job, and that you trust because they know the system, they know the plan.
All right, we'll circle back to this because obviously we'll have to dot in and out of the Watt conversation throughout the course of our show today. But let's get to the big picture, the view from Mount Washington, as we like to call it, the 30,000-foot big picture view, the state of the Steelers heading into game day on Monday Night Football. I'll start. For now, it doesn't matter, Mike, how they got back into first place. They're in first place. It was an ugly fourth quarter against Baltimore. For now, whether they finish in first place or not, it won't mean much of anything all that different in terms of what it's looked like over the last 7 years before this. 9 to 10 wins, get in the playoffs, see if you can surprise somebody, something along those lines. But just at this point, you got here, hold on to first place. At the very, you can't finally win a playoff game unless you get into the playoffs. And the only path to the playoffs, I think right now for anybody in the North, is winning this division. Don't barf it back as soon as you got it. You worked hard to get it back after you gave it away. You resecured it. Don't give it back now with a home Monday night game against a very beatable team. I know they're playing well. I know there are some matchup issues up front with the way they run the football. Like we just talked about, your weakened defense in the front seven. I get it. You've not been good on primetime. Be good on primetime at home. Monday Night Football, Tomlin is the coach. All these sort of past histories that support you in this context with the Dolphins don't do in cold weather. It's all working on your side. Don't puke it back. Just take care of business and get this one, and then get to the Lions next week.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. It's exactly the way I felt about Sunday. And I looked at it, and coming out of that game, you're now back in first place in the AFC North. You won on the road against your arch rival, and now you're back in first place with a chance. As they like to say in sports, you control your own destiny, even though that's not actually logical, because if it's destiny, it's already controlled by someone or something else.
You and Mike Pursuta are the two guys I can never get on that phrase, or I'll never get you off of it. So I prevent myself from using it around you two guys because I know you both hate that phrase.
Not a fan. But and this was reflected in your "You Mad Bro" column this week. Why were so many people unhappy after that? It was a stirring victory. There were things to pick apart, sure, and that's the analyst's job, and we're here to do that. But those who were fans were not happy. I wrote a column for the SN Pittsburgh site that appeared Tuesday or Wednesday about Mike Tomlin and why that was further evidence of my position that they shouldn't be making changes at that position. And not surprisingly, got an avalanche of criticism for that. And I saw it reflected in other areas of the Pittsburgh media as well. I think this city has, or the fan base is struggling to embrace what success what success occurs. Sunday was a success. It was exactly what a lot of people thought wouldn't happen. I don't think either of us had them winning that game. And so I do think that Steelers fans, if they're Steelers fans, need to appreciate when the Steelers do well.
I get it, but at the same time, I also think when you look at the things that went wrong in that game, like how they played in the second half, the stagnant offense in the fourth quarter, the domination of the play count and the yards for Baltimore in the second half. It felt very similar to a lot of the reasons why they're in this predicament as it is right now. And then you factor in on top of that, the belief that a lot of people have that the only reason they won that game is because of some BS NFL rules and some questionable calls.
Hey, okay, so do you want to get into this? Because,
sure.
I mean, okay, all right. So here, this was the perfect analogy for 2025 football, okay, or the perfect sequence. On Saturday, the Big Ten championship game happened, and Jeremiah Smith carried the football over the goal line after catching it on about the 4-yard line, carried it forward over the goal line, and then stepped on the end line after he crossed the goal. On the sideline after he crossed the goal line. Never dropped the ball, but because it was sort of wobbling in his hands as he crossed the goal line, there were those in the media, in the officiating world, on television, the guys calling the game, who questioned whether or not that was a fumble. But he never dropped the ball. He literally never dropped the ball until he was well out of the sideline. He carried the ball across the goal line. He just didn't carry it beautifully across the goal line. So that happens. And then on Sunday, Isaiah Likely drops the football after he catches it, after it's in his hands for a second, maybe he takes 2 steps, and then he drops the football, and now we're arguing that it was a catch. No, he dropped it. He literally
but he had 2 feet down in the end zone first, and that should end the play.
You have to catch the ball.
He did catch it with his hands. He had control while he had 2 feet down. That should be the end of the play, Mike. Like, one thing that people who support that rule and what you're saying right now, the NFL has never been able to reconcile, and certainly did not this past week, the difference between what was control for Aaron Rodgers and what was not control for Isaiah Likely.
Aaron Rodgers was running with the football. Are you talking about the touchdown run?
No. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers catching his own pass for the interception.
Oh, I see. Well, in that
I mean, like, if his knees are on the ground and he's touched and it's done, then it's done. If he's holding the ball and he's got 2 feet in the end zone, that should be done. This extra football move, bogus crap that you're talking about in the end zone, I don't understand that. Like, I get why that's in play when you're trying to make a football move or not to get more yardage. But when there's no more yards to be gained in the end zone, for as much as Roethlisberger was wrong this week for saying it should have been a touchdown, it shouldn't, based on how the rules are, but that's where that rule is flawed, and the flaw was evident in their inability to reconcile the difference between why Rodgers' reception was a catch and Likely's wasn't.
So I disagree with that. I think the rule is much clearer. I shouldn't say very much clearer now than it was in the Calvin Johnson days. It's much clearer. Even like people try to compare it to Jesse James. The difference with Jesse James was the ball never left his hands. It spun in his hands as he was on the ground, but it never left his hands. We don't even know if it touched the ground. We saw it spin in his hands, and so there was this assumption that he wasn't in control, but his hands were under the ball.
No, I hear you, Mike, but when does the play end? Like, if you're Santonio Holmes and you catch it in your hands and you're knocked out of bounds in the end zone, touchdown, win the Super Bowl, he didn't make another football move except fall down out of bounds.
But he also never dropped the ball.
Huh?
He also never dropped the ball. It was in his lap as he was going like this.
Should be a touchdown. Like, that's the problem. That's the problem with the rule in the end zone. The end zone is different.
But if that's the case, I mean, anytime the ball barely touches the guy's hands in the end zone, it's a catch. I did not feel for a second that Likely caught that football because he dropped it. I think that you should have to have the football in order for it to be a catch. To me, this is the instant replay world where we can slow things down to the very 10th of a second. But I can tell you, if in 1975 that would not have been a catch, because I was watching football then, and it wouldn't have been a catch. You have to catch the football. You can't drop it in order for it to be a touchdown.
Okay, so he's going to take it to the sideline and have a fan autograph it to make.
I thought if I were a football player who scored a touchdown, you think I'd be doing this stuff where you drop the ball on the 1 yard line?
No, but Likely wasn't doing that. I mean, it's not like he was celebrating. He was actually I think he was very cognizant of it, which is why he was holding it out there. Now that might have backfired on him, but I think the point.
I think it did. I think that's part of the reason that he dropped it, and part of the reason it wasn't a catch was he was thinking, if I can just keep this out here long enough instead of tucking it in, if he tucked it in, he might have been able to get it to his chest before Porter could knock it out.
Well, I mean, I think the fact that we're still arguing about it right now, a week later, suggests why people, to your greater point, were less than thrilled about the win. And what, like as the analogy that I drew, it wasn't quite Charlie Batch in 2012 going there and beating the eventual Super Bowl champions, limping in after that Browns loss the week before when they were huge underdogs. It wasn't that, but it was a surprising win against your conference rival to regain first place. You're right. You would think under normal circumstances that would create mass celebration, and we would have had a party down Grant Street for a week leading into this game against the Dolphins. I'm countering that by saying I think the officiating dominated conversation this week is part of the reason why.
Yeah.
And the other part of the reason why is the fact that the game was in doubt were for the exact same reasons why people were complaining after losses to Buffalo and the Chargers and these other games that they've dropped along the way, even some games that they've won, which is, like I said, poor play after halftime, getting dominated in the snap count, getting dominated in terms of possession time, not getting the other team off the field in third down, not being able to stay on the field on third down. All these problems that have been prominent throughout the Steelers in 2025 were very much a staple of that game as well, and people are fed up with it 13 weeks in. I can't blame them.
Oh, I think there are certainly things about the team that you have to understand are going to remain issues. I don't think there's any question about that. The run defense, absent Derek Harmon, we talked about TJ Watt and what their record is without him. What about the stat that they're gaining, that opponents are gaining around 95 yards per game rushing with Derek Harmon in the lineup, and 195 in those games that he's missed? I mean, that you want to talk about a stat that defines this team, that may be the most important one to date, and his presence on Monday night would be essential because of it. I get that, but I think you have to look at this as a flawed football team right now that finds ways here and there because of the turnover battle. They've excelled in that. They excelled again, or they certainly succeeded again. I don't know about excelled. Excelled would be maybe reserved for that New England game, but they succeeded again in the turnover battle. Let's not forget, I mean, they did not give up the ball at all to Baltimore's defense, and that's something to remember as well. I think that had a lot to do with the fourth quarter approach and why it failed, and why. But remember, you said poor after halftime. They were not poor after halftime.
They were on defense.
They extended the lead multiple times in the second half.
Poor in the fourth quarter, but they were poor on
terrible
defense
in the fourth quarter. Yes. So at least they're now getting through three quarters, right?
Offensively?
Well, just as a football team, they had three good quarters in this game instead of a terrible second half, entirely the final 30 minutes, which were terrible against Green Bay, terrible against Buffalo. At least in this case, they got through 45 minutes before they had a terrible 15 minutes.
Let's get to our keys to victory, Mike. Why don't you start with your offensive key to victory against the Dolphins on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, my thought was, what worked against Baltimore, do that. And by that, I do not mean, okay, you threw the deep ball against Baltimore, so that's what you do against Miami. No, I mean, be effective at taking what the defense gives you. And I think some of that, sometimes, I know I risk being struck down by lightning right now, but some of that at times is throwing the football over the middle to tight ends. I know that the very statement there risks, me losing my home in Pittsburgh and being expelled from the city and all of that, because you're not allowed to throw the football over the middle to your two high money tight ends and your really promising young tight end. But if that's what's available, as it was in the Bears game, and they completely ignored it, then do it. But what they give you, you take. And that's what happened on Sunday, when the Ravens at times had 9 players in the box, and the Steelers were not going to be able to run successfully in that, even if they had an offensive line with John Hanna, Mike Webster, and who knows who else. They were not going to. Who are you going to throw in there?
Anthony Munoz.
Oh, there you go. Anthony Munoz, awesome guy. I met him when I was in Cincy. Yeah, I mean, you were not running the football effectively into that. So you had to throw the football over it, and they did. And that's what they have to do Monday night. And I don't know how the Dolphins are going to play this because the Ravens was entirely Steelers-based scheme. It was, okay, they don't throw the ball deep effectively at all. They want to run and throw intermediate and throw dump-offs. So we're going to stack up for that. And then they got hit, and it worked.
For my offensive key, it's very simple, Mike. Stay on the goddamn field. Jesus, stay on the field a little bit, would you please? I mean, my God, this play differential thing. They ran 26 fewer plays than Baltimore. They were on the field for barely 26 minutes. They ran 9 offensive plays in the fourth quarter. Baltimore snapped the ball 40 times in the fourth quarter. Stay on the field a little bit. Like, they're not even giving me enough of an opportunity to second guess their play calling because they're not running enough plays. I mean, I get it. Now, Arthur Smith kind of said what I couldn't get Mike Tomlin to say on Tuesday. I tried it with both of them. I had better luck with Arthur yesterday than I did with Mike on Tuesday, which was when the ball got batted back to Rodgers and he caught his own pass. That was supposed to be, I think, a shot that was going to get beyond the sticks. But their fourth quarter possessions went like this: 3 3-and-outs, 3 third-down passes, all short of the sticks. All of them. 2 complete, 1 incomplete. Now, maybe they don't get to one of those, and it's a lesser conversation if Rodgers doesn't get the ball batted down. But I know this. What might have been their best play, even beyond the DK shot against the Ravens to start the game, what might have been my favorite play was them going 3rd and 5 down the sideline and taking a crack to Calvin Austin.
Right.
And it worked. Do that again somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I think that some of the play differential was the fact that they hit a lot of big plays. I mean, I think there were 5 20-plus plays in this game. And so that changes the math. You don't need as many plays at that point to score. But the biggest part was what you talked about, which was they did not have an effective counter for the stacked box because the Ravens never abandoned that, even though they got hit over the top. I think they correctly assumed or correctly, maybe assumption's a bad word, but they correctly sussed out that the Steelers at that point in the game were not going to be throwing the ball deep. Even though they were inviting them to do it, they weren't going to throw the ball deep at that stage of the game because they were protecting a multi-score lead and then eventually a 1-score lead. So they weren't going to do that because you put yourself at risk for a sack fumble. We've seen those. An interception down the sideline. We've seen those. And so I think they felt like the Steelers would play very conservatively in that circumstance. They were correct. And as a result, the Steelers were not able to convert anything. You have to find out an effective counter for that. And it could be a screen. It could be, when have the Steelers ever mixed up their screen game? Their screen game is so basic that everybody in America knows when they're going to do it. And that's why they never work. But a lot of teams run tricky screens, middle screens, tight end screens, lots of different. The Steelers never do any of that. If they're going to run a screen, all the pass rushers are like, oh, he's not blocking me. There must be a screen pass going on over there. Like when you were first running those plays in junior high. Oh, that's how a screen pass works. That's a big part of why the Steelers got into that huge imbalance that you're talking about. And the other part of it, obviously, is the continued struggle to stop the opposition's run game with Derek Harmon absent. That's a huge part of it, and it'll obviously play into what we both talk about as we look at the Dolphins.
Yeah, to that point, let's get to my defense. You're good, right, on your offensive key there?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Let me get to my defensive key next then. My defensive key is you don't have to catch their mobile running backs like Devon Achane. Like, he's tough enough as it is. You got to catch their mobile offensive linemen. Like, those guys are really good at getting to the second level. Aaron Brewer, that center, and Matt Williamson, who I do a show with from Fox Sports Pittsburgh 970, was saying he's one of the most fun offensive linemen in the league to watch. Derek Harmon was effusive in his praise about him. Terrell Austin was all over how good of a player he is. He's only 6'1", 290 only. only 6'1", 290, but in NFL terms, that's kind of small for an offensive lineman.
Yes.
Undrafted out of Texas Southern or North Texas. I don't remember, somewhere. But he's really good at getting to the second level, and they've got size at other places along the offensive line, but they can all move. And that's why they're able to do what they do in creating run alleys for the running backs. And Mike, this is a team that's averaging 192 yards rushing over its last 4 games.
Right.
I know they've played puss since the Bills, and frankly, the Bills are puss when it comes to run defense too. So
Yes.
quite honestly, it's not like they're running through the 85 Bears and the steel curtain here, but the Steelers aren't good against the run. So if they can do that to those teams, they can do it to the Steelers too. So be ready for that and get hands on these offensive linemen and lock them up so they can't get to the next level, and make it a little easier for Wilson and Queen to use their athleticism so they can operate in space to get to Achin without having to fight through offensive linemen to do it.
Yeah, it's exactly the same neighborhood for me. But from my standpoint, I'm looking at it like at this point, you're going to have to assume. I mean, obviously they don't have to assume, but in observation, you're going to have to assume that the opposition is going to have some success running the football. Like I said, that even that 95 that happens with Derek Harmon is not an ideal. It's not an ideal number. I mean, it's not the kind of numbers that the best Steeler defenses have put up in the past. So you're going to have to assume they're going to have some success running. But don't let Tua Tagovailoa have success. He has not been passing well, either in terms of accumulation or accuracy over the course of this successful run for the Dolphins. He's not been elite. He hasn't had a 200-yard game once in that 4-game winning streak. Some of that, again, is maybe absence of necessity because they are running the football so effectively. But he's not been super accurate, lighting it up. So put some pressure on him when you get him into passing downs. Make sure that he doesn't get mobile. Make sure that he doesn't get comfortable. Make sure he doesn't have much time on the majority of occasions, so that he can't be effective in ways that he hasn't been recently effective.
Why don't you throw your bonus key at me, too? This can be anywhere. Special teams, offense, defense, sort of intangibles, coaching, whatever it might be. Hit me with that.
Yeah, one of the things that maybe was hidden in Sunday's success was the fact that the Steelers kicked off 6 times in the game. Now, that's because you're going to kick off once, either start of the first or second half. So that's one of them. But the other 5 is because you scored. And what this team has become really effective at, that a lot of teams continue to struggle with, is the coverage of the dynamic kickoff scheme. The Ravens accepted 5 kicks in that game. I mentioned they kicked off 6. One of them, Boz must have slipped or whatever, but didn't hit the landing zone. And so that was a penalty. But on the 5 that were completed kicks into the landing zone, the average starting position for the Ravens was the 27-yard line. That's a win in today's football. It's hard to do better than that. And you look at Ben Skoranek has been magnificent on special teams. Carson Bruner has been terrific. Peyton Wilson. Those guys have all been special on the special teams, and especially more than anything on the coverage of those kickoffs. So 1, keep doing that, and 2, keep doing that a lot, which means you're scoring points.
Mine's going to be back to offense. Somebody besides DK and the running backs have to make some catches. They just have to. The remaining 7 receivers and tight ends who were targeted during the game ended up with only 6 catches for 39 yards. So it's DK and the running backs, and then 6 for 39, everybody else.
Right.
That can't be the case. They've got to get some more ball distribution to the other wide receivers and tight ends, especially since they have so many tight ends. And I know they're down 1 with Washington. We'll see where that goes. But that's my other offensive key. And then I think if you do that, it goes back to my first offensive key, which is staying on the field, which they have to do to some greater degree.
And it goes to mine too, which is take advantage of what the opposition gives you. And look,
and I know this too, Mike. Like they're giving a lot of praise to MVS and Thielen for being veteran presence, and Rodgers was talking about how at the very least, when they run the right route, then that opens things up for everybody else. It's not even just about me knowing that they're in the right place for me to throw them the ball. It's that I know the coverage is getting pulled away, so I can go to the guy who might be the primary read. And that's all deep level football stuff. And, it's all, I get it, like that's everything you talk about in the coach's room that maybe you don't have time to spit out during the analysis for Tony Romo or JJ Watt in between plays. That's why we talk to these guys for 10 minutes at a time once a week to get that sort of insight. And it's great, but there is the box score component of it too. Like everybody likes to go beyond the box score. The box score sometimes matters too, because it can't just be the running backs catching the ball 6 yards at a time. And DK was great last week, but that's been a little bit of an outlier in terms of the big game that we've been hoping for Metcalf. We got it. But if it's not going to be there on a regular basis, it's got to be spread out, and it's not really being spread at this point.
And that's why we talked before about the absence of the tight end game. I mean, I don't know that the Dolphins aren't going to throw, 3 linebackers in the middle of the field and make sure that there's no trap, that it's all traffic and there's no openings. Well, that's fine. If they do that, then that means the perimeter receivers are open. But whatever it is that they give you, take it. And that's not something the Steelers have regularly done. They certainly did in Baltimore on Sunday.
All right, time for On the Other Sideline now. This is where we go and take a look at the game from the other team's perspective. In this case, that's the Miami Dolphins coming here to Pittsburgh, winning 4 games in a row, and that's where I'll launch from, Mike. If you are actually one of the hottest teams in the NFL like the Dolphins, are you in fact that, or did you just beat a bunch of garbage teams after the Bills? Because, well, you did. New Orleans, the Commanders, the Jets, there's nothing there. You beat the Bills. That's a good win, even though, like I said, they're flawed in a lot of ways too, what with the inability to stop the run. You run the ball well. Good for you. You exploited them. But if you're really still in the hunt, if you're really still alive, if you really want to be something more than just a team that beats up on lesser teams, this is a winnable game. The Steelers, especially if they don't have Watt, they're dented, they're flawed, they haven't won on prime time yet. You can come here and win, even though a lot of the cards are stacked against you, if you are what you deem to be, which is not just middle of the road, lose to everybody good, beat up on the bad clubs.
I want to raise a question about something you said. Still in the hunt. Do you honestly believe they're still in the hunt? Because if you're saying they're still in the hunt, then you can't at the same
I'm just saying they're mathematically alive, right?
Yeah. I mean, but so like we both believe that it'd be very difficult for any AFC North team to get a wild card.
No, I'm talking about the Dolphins.
Yeah, but so my
AFC East. You mean then AFC East?
No, I'm saying that we both believe.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Any AFC North team to do it. So if it would be difficult for the Steelers or the Ravens to do it at this point, it would be very, very difficult, if not impossible, for a team that's under 500 at this point to get that.
That means the Chiefs too, then.
Yeah, I mean, now the Chiefs are a little different because they are the Chiefs, and until you see the final breath out of there, you're not going to believe it. But in the case of the Dolphins, I'm not sure whether they can fight and stay alive, because that's what you do, and because fighting and staying alive gets you more money in your next contract. But realistically, it's going to be very difficult. The path certainly is more difficult for them to get to the wild card than it is even for the Steelers because of the difference in their records. So I don't know whether I believe that, but I do think that along the same lines as what you're saying, that this is a team that comes in sort of in the same position and shape that the Ravens came to the Steelers. And we both were suspicious of the Ravens' success because, again, the schedule. The NFL schedules don't allow a lot of teams much room to breathe. So when you get it, as the Dolphins did and as the Ravens did prior to the Steelers game, for the most part, you have to take advantage of that. And the Dolphins, to their credit, have. And I think that they can look at Monday night as somewhat, obviously not quite to the same level. The Steelers aren't struggling to the degree that the Commanders are, or New Orleans. They certainly are not in that position. But I don't think the Dolphins are coming in here on Monday night fearing this matchup. And so that's that mentality. You can sit there and pretend like you're hot because you're beating all these great teams. You're not. But you can also look at all the technical things you're doing well as the Dolphins, how you're running the football, how you've been successful at that. And you can look at the Steelers and say, well, they're not stopping the run effectively at all. They've had a few games where they have, the Bears game, for an example. But for the most part, it's not working on that side. So we should be able to come in there and assert our authority. That has to be the Dolphins' approach.
Time now for Stat Pack. This is where we find a most telling stat of the game. And by the way, you can comment, get your thoughts in on what you think the keys to the game are. If the Dolphins win, how did they do it? For the Steelers, what do they do to make sure that they don't backslide after getting that big win against the Ravens? What's your stat of the game, Mike?
Yeah, my stat of the game is 10-3. That's the combined turnover differential favoring Miami in that 4-game winning streak. They have been very effective in that department, as well as the Steelers have in their victories throughout the year. They don't give up the ball a lot. They don't fumble at all, at least in that stretch. All the turnovers, the Dolphins turnovers, all 3 of them were interceptions. The 2 threw, and they are very good at taking the ball away from you with interceptions. They had 6 picks in those 4 games. So that's something that I think is maybe the most important element of Monday night. One of the interesting things, this is sort of a second stat, but the Steelers are 5-0 when they don't turn it over. 5-0. So that's 5 of their 7 wins. They had 0 turnovers, and they only have 2 turnovers combined in the other two victories. So it's pretty obvious that the most important element for the Steelers is to continue to protect that turnover differential. And I know that leads to a style of football, especially on the offensive side, that can be aggravating. Goes back to what I talked about before with the absence of throws over the middle. But as the Steelers have shown, if you don't create some threat, you're going to turn it over anyway. I mean, go through the Buffalo first half. They did not. They were in the lead, but they were not threatening for much of that first half because of the way they approached it offensively. And then, boom, first play of the second half, they turn it over for 7 points for the Bills, and the game's never the same again. So it can't just be ultra caution that leads you to not turn over the ball. It has to be intelligence, execution, and being smart about how you call the plays and what plays you call.
My stat is going to be this: 2 and 9 are actually the numbers that I'm going to pick. 2 are the number of deflected passes at the line of scrimmage all year long for the Miami Dolphins. Like, the Steelers lead the NFL with 20. I would have thought that their number would have been higher. I don't know how you get through this many games without getting more than 2 passes defensed at the line of scrimmage. This is from Matt Williamson, Fox Sports Pittsburgh 970 and Steelers Radio Network. My colleague over there, he came up with this one. Like, don't you have 2 passes that hit you in the helmet accidentally during the course of a year, or like even a 4-game win streak like you're on right now? Now, that said, in like the back 2/3 of the defense, they had 9 pass breakups in one game last week against Brady Cook, who's a Missouri quarterback, undrafted free agent that the Jets threw in there. And I think they, took advantage of that situation last week, to say the least. They intercepted him twice. They had 9 PBUs, including 5 alone from Rasul Douglas, who was gambling on the ball, I guess, every chance he gets. That's not going to happen against Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to allow that to take place. You won't see that same sort of effect. But, Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's not getting a ton of takeaways again, as we griped about towards the end of his stay here. But he's been a stabilizing presence at the safety position. And they've had some injuries along the way at corner, but I think all your stats that you pointed at, Mike, are accurate. And as Mike Tomlin also said, a description of how they've come along during the course of this year in the secondary. I will give you this number as well: 6 sacks last time out against the Jets. That's something you probably won't see this week with the way that Rodgers gets rid of the ball. But keep in mind, the Steelers are down at offensive tackle to what, their 4th guy in the depth chart right now in Dylan Cook.
Right.
So that's kind of a number to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. So I do think that one of the things that was commented upon by some of the people, some of the analysts who looked at Dylan Cook, was that you're going to miss more in the run game if he's out there than in the pass game. So that could sort of play back into what you're talking about as well, that with between Rodgers getting rid of the ball and generally good protection recently, I think when you get generally good protection, then you can react better to those plays where it doesn't happen. I mean, the evaded sack that Rodgers had, where the player literally swept over the top of him and could have taken him down, and he was able to get out of that and extend the play. I think you saw more comfort in the pocket from Aaron Rodgers against Baltimore than you had in a long time.
This is another one that Matt gave me, and this is a doozy. And I thought about not even saying this because it's a little hard to follow, so I'll explain it best as I can, all right? If you take – let me bring it up for Matt here on my text. So it's called negative or positive air yards on third down to the sticks. It's air yards to the sticks, plus or minus air yards to the sticks. So in other words, if it's 3rd and 9, right, and you throw a 10-yard pass, you're +1.
Right.
If it's 3rd and 9, and stop me if you've heard this before, you're short of the sticks from the Pittsburgh Steelers, as they always are, and you throw it like 4 yards in the air, then you're -5, all right?
Right.
So right now, Rodgers is -3.3 average air yards to the sticks. So on average, he's throwing more than 3 yards short of the line to gain on third down. Average. Only Dylan Gabriel is behind that from the Browns this year. And this is amazing. For as long as they've kept this stat, and I don't know how long it is, but it's back to before Patrick Mahomes was the starter in Kansas City, apparently, because the only QB who's pacing as a regular full-year starter, the only QB who's pacing at a lower rate than Rodgers right now are 2 years of Alex Smith with the Chiefs, where they used to do that all the time. Okay, right. Throw it short, run long, that sort of thing. The Steelers don't have the kind of weapons that the Chiefs did to do that back then, and that's why the Chiefs went to Patrick Mahomes eventually. All right, yes. But like that blew my mind that only Dylan Gabriel is doing it less than Aaron Rodgers, and he's Aaron Rodgers, and he's Dylan Gabriel. All right, so just kind of keep that in mind. I know that's a great
number. The Steelers must lead the league in give up plays. How many times have you seen the Steelers sack a quarterback, put him into 3rd and 13, and then give up the conversion? 14, and the Steelers offense never says, well, if it's only 3rd and 13, if they can convert it, no.
Punt and live for another day, Mike.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's one of the things that certainly has to drive Steelers fans crazy.
All right, time now for Who Will Take Flight. This is where we talk about Mike's flight night. We were talking about all the great games on the slate for this weekend. The Steelers play on Monday Night Football, so if you're at Mike's for Monday Night Football, they've got flight night. Be there for that. I actually don't know if they'll do that. Now that I say this out loud, flights can be a little cumbersome when there's a billion people in the bar. So they might not do it for flight night first. They might suspend that for this Monday. I don't know. But usually Monday Night Football, it's flight night at Mike's. So go check that out. Who do you have to take flight for both teams?
Yeah, for the Steelers, I'm starting with Pat Freiermuth. They have to figure this out. I mean, we're way too deep in the season with a healthy, high level. I won't certainly call him elite, a high level pass catching tight end who, by the way, has, and this is something that I've noticed and has persisted throughout the year, because you have Darnell Washington. He doesn't get much attention for this, but Muth has become a very capable blocker. He was often derided for that earlier in his career, but he's become a very capable blocker, has thrown a lot of big blocks in this season. And so he's giving you what you ask for, what you demand in the run game or in the pass game that goes to teammates, and he tries to help the play along. But you're not doing anything hardly with him in the pass game, and we know that he can do it. There's no question that he can do it. We've seen it this year. We saw it in the Bengals game, certainly, and we've seen it throughout his career, that he is a high-level pass-catching tight end, and they're not giving him time, and they're not giving him targets, and it doesn't add up to me at all. why they don't use the threat of the run to hit him over the middle when teams are ganging up in the box and you flare him out. Every now and then they're going to forget about him. And the Steelers never, although they've been caught on that play or that type of play, that concept a lot of times over the years, they don't often use that themselves. Oh, they're going to forget about the tight end because they're worried about the ball. We've seen TJ go for the ball and give up perimeter passes or passes over, short hook routes, that sort of thing. But the Steelers don't do it. And I just think it's such a colossal misuse. I don't want to say waste, a colossal misuse of his ability to help this offense. On the defensive side, I was going to say Minka, just to sort of talk about the fact that he's coming back to Pittsburgh, but he's mostly playing slot corner. And if you're a slot corner against the Steelers, how much work do you really do?
Right.
Hi, I'm out here. Somebody's got to be in this guy's area.
Field when he was here, same sort of concept. Right.
Oh,
exactly.
my God. I mean, so I'm going to go with Zach Seiler, 2.5 sacks against the Jets, part of that sack party they had last week. Steelers got to make sure they block him, but I suppose I expect that he'll get some pressure on Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, for the Steelers, I'd plan to go with Derek Harmon coming back. The run differential numbers when he's in versus when he's out are staggering. So I was going to go with him because he'll be very important. If he can catch up and get to that center Brewer we talked about before, I think it's going to be a fun matchup all day long. I'm going to adjust, though. I'm going to pivot off of him and say Herbig and or Sawyer because of the Watt situation.
Right.
And I think Sawyer's played 11 defensive snaps the last 3 weeks. They need to get more out of him, if for no other reason, to give the other two guys a break and to set the edge and be a stout run defender, which is what he was brought here to be at the outside linebacker position, as well as a pass rusher. I think his skills and his skill set could be very useful this week based on who they're playing and based on Watt's injury. So I'll say Sawyer, maybe to a lesser degree Herbig, because he's always a big degree, except that he hasn't played enough the last 2 weeks.
To amplify your part about your point about Derek Harmon, though, if TJ is absent, then the left edge of that defensive line becomes even more important than it already was hugely important. But it becomes even more so because now you're playing with either Herbig or Sawyer on that spot. So it would be great to have Derek back.
And for Miami, I'll go with one or both of their tight ends, Darren Waller or Greg. Is it Dulcich? I don't know quite how to say his last name, but they only have 13 catches and 18.
That's why we don't know how to say his name.
Right. And Jonnu Smith gone. Those guys in. We keep saying, where's Jonnu? Everybody in Miami is saying, where's Jonnu? Which is kind of ironic, but that's the case because, well, I will say this, Waller has 4 touchdowns, though. So there's that. But this just feels like one of those games like, oh, now their tight ends are going to kill us, while Jonnu has done little to nothing since being here. Hopefully this is a game where he can get involved, too. I'd love to see that. You brought up Freiermuth, but anybody, give me somebody, especially if Washington is limited or out or whatever the case may be. All right, time now for our Around the League segment. You want to start?
Yeah, how about Grandpa Rivers coming back?
Literally Grandpa Rivers.
Yeah, that's why I called him that. Yeah, he's one of the – I saw this on Twitter. I don't remember who else it is, but they listed as something like 5-6 names as the only actual grandfathers that have played an American major league sport. And if he goes out on Sunday, and it looks like that's the direction that the Colts are trending, he'll be the first in a very long time and the first in a very short line of grandfathers who've actually done that. It's amazing that that's where the Colts are in their quarterback scheme, that they have to get somebody who the last I heard was coaching high school football. I don't know if he's still doing that or not. But my gosh, how many years has he been out of the league now? 3? It's
4, I thought.
Isn't 4. It's wild that's the way that, I mean, that's literally like,
oh, Ben is pissed he didn't get the call first.
Oh, I'm saying it's literally like the Steelers calling Ben and saying, "Hey, you got any football left in you?"
Now he's going to expect it. If somebody gets hurt, like if Rudolph were to get hurt behind Rodgers, Ben is going to demand the call.
Could you imagine?
You might call them.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't want it to happen. I don't want to speak it into existence. But could you imagine Steeler Nation's heads if they called Ben instead of putting Will Howard out there.
Oh, well, I mean, what a concentric circle that would be right there. My God. I'm going to go with perhaps the death of the Chiefs, Ravens, and Colts all this weekend. I mean, I might be a little premature on the Colts, at least based on the standings, because certainly other teams, the AFC South, could screw this up and lose themselves. But if they were to lose, they'd fall to 8-6. If the Ravens lose, they're 6-8. We talked about the Chiefs. If they were to lose the Chargers, that would get the Chargers to 10-4, and the Chiefs would then fall to 6-8. I mean, you could see, at the start of the season, we thought for sure the Chiefs and the Ravens were at least making the playoffs. And when the Colts came here, they looked like a lock for the playoffs. The Steelers broke the Colts. They've never been fixed since. So I think that's going to be a very telling thing this weekend. And Mike, you spent so much time in Cincinnati. Their heads have to be spinning after what Joe Burrow said this week. What is he? Was he talking about retirement? What's he talking about?
I don't know what point he's trying to make. And there was a lot of, like, people have been spending say Shakespeare was 1,500, 1,600. So people have been spending like 600 trying to pick through what Shakespeare meant by this and what by that. So imagine that. But it's also the quarterback of your football team who was supposed to carry you to Super Bowl glory on a regular basis, saying that the game's got to be fun.
Well, what's not fun for him? People taking shots at him because he's the one that screwed up against Buffalo? Is that, as opposed to it's everybody else's fault but Joe? Is that it?
Yes, that could be it. That could be it, because he hasn't had a lot of that in his time as a player. I mean, think about it. He's had very little of this. He's had a lot of it over the last 2 years. But when he played at LSU, they were so good that they encountered almost no resistance between him and Jamar Chase and Jefferson and all the rest of those guys. I mean, nobody could deal with it. And so very little failure there. And then pretty instant success in the NFL, getting the Super Bowl, I think, in year 2. But since then, it's been a bit of a struggle. And the last 2 years have been really a disaster. And a lot of that was certainly not on him. I mean, a year ago, they're losing every game 40-35 or whatever. And then this year he has been absent a lot, but not a lot of success there the last couple of years. And the year before last year, when they were losing all the 40-35 games, he was hurt then too. And so he's had 3 years where they basically will miss the playoffs. And so it's just, I'm sure he's frustrated, but when your quarterback starts talking like that, I think you start to worry, and especially an organization like the Bengals, if there's any franchise in the league that can screw up having Joe Burrow on their team, I'd say it's them. I still think that going ahead and paying T. Higgins, while T. Higgins, I have unbelievable respect for him as a football player, and he should be making huge money somewhere to play football. There's no way that you look at that defense the way it was, the way it's shaped up to be last year, and then say, oh, yeah, we'll pay a second wide receiver a ton of money so we don't have any money to spend on our D. And we don't have enough money to spend on our O-line and all the rest of that. I mean, they have made some unbelievably convoluted moves that have prolonged Joe Burrow's frustration.
Okay, let's get to some comments here. And Yinzer Gear 43 says, I think too many people think TJ is playing poorly. He is playing poorly for TJ, but he is still an asset to the D. That run game worries me. Yeah, we talked about the run defense for the Steelers versus this Miami ground attack quite a bit today. And as far as Watt goes, yeah, he's playing poorly when it comes to, by his standards anyway, like you said, the pass rush aspect of the game. By every definable metric, he is not what he has been. Now, in the run defense department, I thought he played a decent game in the first half. Like, he was really responsible for not letting Derrick Henry get loose early in that game. He tracked him down. He scraped down the line of scrimmage and made some plays at or behind the line of scrimmage on Henry that I thought were very good. He's good at that. Porter was good at that. Harrison was good at that from that outside linebacker position. He got run at by the Bills quite a bit. That's sort of a tough thing in that situation. That's why they like Sawyer, because they think Sawyer is going to be good at holding the edge in those kind of situations. TJ usually is good. They got around TJ, or they got between TJ and anybody who was underneath, because they spread him so wide to a certain degree in Buffalo. Like, there's a lot of things that didn't work for Watt. in that situation. But, as far as I look at it, Mike, they need to figure out something, but there's 10 other guys in that rush defense too that have to be part of the calculus.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I don't think TJ does well in that circumstance on the run D is he plays so aggressively that if his initial choice isn't the right one, then the wrong guy gets hit hard. And we saw that in the Ravens playoff game last year multiple times. Lamar Jackson took a lot of hard hits in that game, but Derrick Henry ran for a zillion yards. And that's the one element that I don't think he does great is read the play. There too many times he just reads, okay, I think that's what it is. I'm going to go destroy that person. And he does, whether the player has the football or not.
This is from PTNA417316, whatever your Twitter handle is. We're pushing for the whiniest fan base in the league. I don't care if they keep Tomlin or not. One thing I do know is crying like a child about it doesn't change anything. I don't think it's crying like a child to say we want to do better than 9-8. I don't think that's crying like a child.
I will once again point out, as I have to many of my Twitter followers, they've been 9-8 one time.
Or 10-7, or whatever. There's also been 8-8.
Pretty good.
They were also 8-8 quite a bit to keep the streak alive too.
Yeah, they were 8-8 three times, including in 2019 when most coaches in the NFL would have gone 4-14 or 4-12.
They're also 4-14 when it comes to playoff wins.
That's definitely true.
Yes. Keep in mind that I keep saying that about this 2019 season, the infamous Duck and Mason year. They were 8-5. They were 8-5, and then they lost their last 3 games to not get in.
That's true.
So,
but let's not forget they were 8-5 with Lainey Wilson's future husband and Mason Rudolph.
Matt says that the Steelers are going to get pounded in the playoffs again. Let me bring up his tweet. Loves celebrating the new year, getting pounded 40-16. It's all up from here. When it comes to where they will go in the playoffs, I do think the likelihood exists, don't you, Mike, that if let's say they get in at 10-7, all right, and they're the 4th team of the 4 division champions in the conference playoffs, they'll probably be a home underdog, don't you think?
Oh, I think that's true. And, it's interesting that you say that, though. Home underdog is necessarily a surprise lately. I found a great stat from a terrific NFL writer, Frank Schwab from Yahoo. There are 2 11-2 teams in the league right now. 2 11-2 teams, and they're both home underdogs this week. So they don't even believe in the teams that are doing well.
Here's one, by the way, since you brought up Frank Schwab, good tie-in here, Mike. This comes from Rich. He was reading the same thing I read. This is from Frank Schwab, where he says Yahoo. He says, I know you're being sarcastic, but Yahoo Sports has their 3rd quarter grades and basically says what you have to be seriously. I don't know mediocrity got a grade higher than C, but they gave the Steelers a B-. If you were to give them a grade through 3 quarters of a report card, what would you give them, Mike?
I think that's a pretty reasonable grade. I do. No, if you're grading the whole enterprise, and including the decision to trade away Minka and all that, no, then I give him a C or C+.
Yeah, see, I'm in that range too.
But if you just talk about the football team that's on the field and what they've been able to do and what they haven't been able to do, I think B-, because they were able to go into Baltimore and win. Now they would forfeit that and go back to a C if Baltimore came here and took the win back. But because they were able to go into Baltimore and win, I slide it up to the B-.
Yeah, it's a B- if you're grading on the scale of the AFC North. Based on the rest of your classmates in the AFC North. Yeah, I guess. Well, then I guess you're an A because you're in first place. But if you take that part of the equation out of it, yeah, I mean, you can't go around calling this a historic defense, then having it be historically bad. You just can't.
Well, I mean, they miscalculated it. As I said, if you're grading the whole enterprise and you include the decision to trade away Minka when you had no capable safety behind him, I mean, that's a terrible decision. The word I used last week was calamitous, and I'm not going away from that. I think Jalen Ramsey has been a fine addition to the team, but he was supposed to be an additive to your cornerback coverage, whether he played in the slot or outside. He was supposed to make your cornerback coverage better instead of saving your bacon at safety. You shouldn't have had to save it. If you were going to trade Minka or you even think about it, you should have drafted or signed a free agent safety in the offseason that was capable, not someone you'd cut 2/3 of the way through the year.
All right, Mike, we've hit 10 o'clock. That means it's time to go. So before we go, give me a prediction on the game and give me a prop as well.
Yeah. So I anybody listening, I'm now, when I pick the Steelers to win, like, it doesn't happen. And when I pick the Steelers to lose, they have won a few times. So I'm going to pick them to lose. Dolphins 24, Steelers 21. So how seriously you take me on that is up to you. But my props have been, give or take, pretty good. And so I'm going to go under 1.5 TDs, Tua, 2 touchdown passes, under 1.5. I know I'm in the plus side on my props. I haven't won them all.
I think we both are. We both hit again yesterday or last week when I said take the Ravens in the second half at -2.5. That covered. Actually, if it weren't the likely call, I would have been much easier and in the clear, a lot easier, but barely scraped by on that one, but I did. I'm going to go Steelers win 26-23 in overtime. I'll add the in overtime disclaimer because they want to keep us there and torture us in 5-degree weather, and they want me out there for my Channel 4 live hit, freezing my butt off at midnight. So I'm going to say Steelers 26-23 in overtime. Here's my prop. I'll give you a couple props. Warren, at least 25 rush yards in the first half. That's only at -108. I know it was terrible last week. They only had 34 as a team, but with the weather being what it is and some of their limitations, 25 rush yards in the first half. I think Warren can get there. You don't feel good about this one. Feel good about the next one. Gainwell, -120, at least 50 total yards from scrimmage. Miami is 25th against the run. Keep that in mind. 131.9 allowed. One of those two is going to hit with those two backs for sure, I think. So playing both, maybe you hit both against the Miami run defense. That's it for us. Mike, have a good week. We'll catch up before the Detroit game, okay?